Ryan, is that really you?
Funny, you said I'd never do better.
I didn't think you'd move on this fast. Can we talk for just 1 minute?
You had your chance 2 months ago.
Ryan, please don't walk away.
2 months after my wife left me, she walked into a luxury restaurant expecting a normal evening. Instead, she stopped so suddenly that the hostess nearly bumped into her from behind. Standing only 20 feet away was the man she had confidently walked out on, laughing and smiling beside another woman. The expression on Vanessa's face wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy either. It was shock, pure shock. Because the last time she saw me, I was standing alone in our driveway watching her drive away. In her mind, I was supposed to stay there emotionally long after she left. My name is Ryan Mercer, and for most of my adult life, I believed marriage meant commitment through difficult seasons. I believed people sometimes lost their way and eventually found it again. What I didn't understand was that some people become so focused on what they think they're missing that they completely overlook what they already have. My wife spent years looking for something better. By the time she realized what she had lost, I was already building a life she could no longer be part of. Vanessa and I were married for 20 years. We met in our 20s when neither of us had much money and both of us had big dreams. Together we built a beautiful life. We bought a home, raised 2 children, traveled whenever we could, and slowly created the kind of financial security most couples spend decades trying to achieve. From the outside, everything looked successful. Friends admired our relationship. Family members assumed we would grow old together. Even I believed it. The changes started gradually. At first, Vanessa became obsessed with comparing our life to other people's lives. Every dinner conversation somehow turned into a discussion about someone else's husband, someone else's vacation, someone else's house, or someone else's lifestyle. Social media made everything worse. She spent hours every day watching carefully edited versions of reality and eventually started believing everyone around us was living a more exciting life than we were. What began as harmless comparison slowly evolved into dissatisfaction. Suddenly, my stability wasn't attractive anymore. My consistency became predictable. My loyalty became boring. The same qualities that helped build our family somehow became evidence that I wasn't enough. Every accomplishment seemed smaller than it used to. Every effort received less appreciation. It felt like I was competing against an imaginary version of life that no real person could ever provide. The final year of our marriage felt different from everything that came before it. Vanessa became increasingly distant. She spent more time with new friends who constantly encouraged her to prioritize herself and chase happiness wherever she believed it existed. Their advice always sounded empowering on the surface, but none of them seemed particularly happy themselves. Looking back, I realize miserable people often give the loudest relationship advice. One evening after dinner, Vanessa asked if we could talk. The moment she sat across from me, I knew what was coming. There was a strange calmness in her voice that only appears when someone has already made a decision. She explained that she wasn't happy anymore. She said she needed excitement, growth, and freedom. She told me she felt trapped by routine and wanted a different future. I listened quietly because there was nothing left to argue about. People don't accidentally arrive at conversations like that. They rehearse them for weeks, sometimes months. By the time she spoke those words, she had already emotionally left the marriage. The conversation wasn't about finding a solution. It was about informing me of a decision she had already made. Near the end of the discussion, she stood up and looked directly at me. There was confidence in her eyes, not uncertainty, not regret, confidence. Then she delivered the sentence I would replay in my mind for weeks afterward. "You'll never find someone better than me." She didn't say it cruelly. She said it confidently, as if it were an obvious fact. As if she genuinely believed I would spend the rest of my life comparing every future relationship to her and coming up disappointed. Then she left. The first few weeks after the divorce were difficult. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. 20 years of habits don't disappear overnight. Every room in the house reminded me of something. Every routine felt incomplete. Every quiet evening seemed longer than it used to. There were moments when I questioned everything, moments when I wondered if she was right. But eventually something changed. Instead of focusing on what I lost, I started focusing on what I still had. I returned to the gym. I started eating better. I reconnected with old friends. I traveled more often. I spent more time with my children. Most importantly, I stopped measuring my future through the lens of my past. For years, my identity revolved around being a husband. Once that role disappeared, I had the opportunity to rediscover parts of myself I had neglected. The process wasn't dramatic. It was gradual. Small improvements stacked on top of each other until one day I realized I felt better than I had in years. The physical transformation was obvious. I lost weight, gained confidence, and looked healthier than I had in a decade. The emotional transformation mattered even more. I stopped seeking validation from people who failed to appreciate me. I stopped apologizing for who I was. I stopped carrying responsibility for someone else's unhappiness. About 6 weeks after the divorce, I attended a charity fundraiser through a mutual business contact. That's where I met Emily. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't chasing attention. She was simply kind, the kind of person who listened when people spoke and laughed naturally instead of performing for a room. Our conversation lasted nearly 2 hours that first evening. There was no pressure, no expectations, and no complicated history attached to it. For the first time in a very long time, spending time with someone felt easy. Over the following weeks, we saw each other regularly. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekend plans. Everything developed naturally because neither of us was trying to force anything. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to replace my ex-wife. I was simply enjoying the company of someone who appreciated me exactly as I was. Then came the restaurant. The irony still makes me smile. It was one of Vanessa's favorite restaurants. During our marriage, she insisted it had the best view in the city. Emily and I happened to choose it because she wanted to celebrate a promotion at work. Neither of us knew Vanessa would be there that night. Yet somehow life has a way of creating moments no writer could invent. I noticed Vanessa immediately when she walked through the entrance. Her expression changed the second she saw me. She froze. The confidence she carried out of our marriage vanished almost instantly. What shocked her wasn't that I was dadding. What shocked her was how happy I looked. For months, she probably imagined me struggling, regretting, and wishing things had turned out differently. Instead, she found a man who looked healthier, happier, and more confident than he had during the final years of their marriage. The moment became even more uncomfortable when she realized Emily was younger, successful, elegant, and genuinely happy to be sitting beside me. Suddenly, the certainty Vanessa carried into the divorce didn't seem so certain anymore. Halfway through the evening, she approached our table. Emily immediately sensed the situation and politely excused herself. Vanessa stood there silently for several seconds. Then she asked if we could talk. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. She admitted she had made mistakes. She admitted life hadn't unfolded the way she expected. Most importantly, she admitted she never thought I would move on so quickly. I almost laughed, because she still didn't understand. This wasn't about moving on quickly. It was about starting the process the moment she left. People think healing begins when pain ends. In reality, healing begins when acceptance begins. Before walking away, Vanessa looked at me and asked a question. "Are you happy?" I looked toward Emily, who was smiling while talking to a waiter near the bar. Then I looked back at my ex-wife. And for the first time since the divorce, the answer came easily. Yes. Not because I found someone else. Not because my life became perfect. Not because everything worked out exactly as planned. I was happy because I finally understood something important. The right person doesn't make you feel lucky they chose you. The right person makes you feel appreciated for who you already are. 2 months earlier, my wife said I'd never find someone better than her. Standing in that restaurant, she finally realized the truth. The better thing I found wasn't another woman. It was the version of myself I discovered after she left.